Use it up, wear it out, make do or do without. This phrase was a survival rule that the American families during the Great Depression repeatedly whispered in their small homes under poverty. It was a time where they needed to rely on their resourcefulness and careful financial management. So, during the 1930s, the household habits encompassed extreme frugality. No food was thrown away needlessly, clothes were at hand-me-downs, constantly fixed or patched, and recycling and reusing items became the new norm. Communities had each other's backs when formal systems failed and supported one another. And lastly, families got rid of anything that was not necessary, like radios, telephones, and trips to the movies. This change happened not because the people wanted to live more plainly, it happened because circumstances left them with no options but to live without those luxuries. So, how did a wealthy nation fall so far? Well, before we delve deeper into the Great Depression, it all began in the Roaring Twenties, which was a period of fast economic expansion and technological innovations. Factories sprang up, and there was a surge in consumer goods in the market. The stock market meant prosperity to the people, and for many Americans, it felt like they were living in the good times. But tragedy came forth the instability of the economy that was hidden behind the optimistic gaze of the American people. So, according to an article from the National Archives in 2016, the stock market crashed and left many people under a panic. Banks at the time had no insurance, and they were allowed to use customer savings to invest and make high risk bets on financial transactions like volatile stocks. Eventually, they gambled the majority of people's money away to make a profit, and they relied on public trust to only to hold on to a little bit of physical cash. Simultaneously, people started to stop buying stocks, and over time, there was less and less individuals going to the market, and the values of the stocks fell. So millions of people followed this behavior, and the market ended up collapsing because no one was buying. So the worth of the stocks became zero. After the collapse of the market, confidence in the stock market disappeared, as well as the trust in the banks. People understood that the banks only held on to a small amount of physical cash. So, as a rush of depositors withdrew their money out of panic, the mentality was first come, first serve. So, the first customer would receive their savings, and the last customers walked away with nothing. So then, soon later, when banks actually ran out of physical money, it was no longer possible to give deposit back, even for the people who had earned money their entire lives and saved a lot. They walked away with nothing. So this caused widespread panic among the American people and left them in a state of poverty. So because of this fear, people decided to depend on a different financial method. They stopped spending money, especially items that weren't for necessity. So individuals saved their money and it prevented them from circulating through the economy. This became more difficult because businesses became um, um, they started earning less profit and it resulted in laying off a ton of workers, leading to these businesses shutting down. This cycle made the crisis worse and the effects started to appear in 1932. In 1932, the amount of unemployed individuals reached 750,000 in Chicago, according to the data collected by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. The results were devastating because the number represents hundreds of thousands of people going home to tell their families that they couldn't afford dinner that night. And this meant life of soup kitchens, overcrowded shelters, and families going home to their families in despair. So from the Great Depression, not only did it impact the United States, it also globally created an economic collapse and allowed extremist movements to gain power. So in Germany, the economic desperation brought forth the rise of the Nazi regime, displaying how financial crisis can also reshape the path of the world's history. This collapse marked a change in the way Americans ran their systems. So the Great Depression made the United States rethink their current system by thinking about how to run a system safer. Now we have banks that are insured so people do not lose their savings overnight. And we have Securities and Exchange Commission exist to prevent companies from misleading their investors, and social security helps prevent the elderly from living on the streets in poverty. So now Americans expect the governments to step in during economic crisis. So this point history help us reshape our infrastructure and expand workers' rights. Roads, bridges, and public buildings were constructed not only to improve the nation and but to provide the more jobs. So the government grew in size and allowed more people to protect its citizens during in similar economic disasters. The Great Depression taught us that good times were not guaranteed, and the economy is built on trust, not just money. So even after the darkest period in our history, our country learned that it's important to stand back up and become stronger. This lesson remains important today and serves as a cautionary tale. Thank you.